It is October 8th at 6 o'clock, and we'll start with roll call attendance. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Here.
Councilmember Palmer? Here. Councilmember Little Roberts?
Here.
Councilmember Borton?
Here.
Mayor DeVeerd?
Here. Item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all rise and join us in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, I don't think we have someone for the item number 3.
Madam Mayor, you're correct.
Okay, so I'll move to item 4, adoption of the agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
move we adopt the agenda as published.
I have a motion and second to adopt the agenda as published. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes. Council, I just have a few announcements under upcoming events. I was mistaken. Last week was not the last Main Street Market. It is actually this Saturday. If any of you have not attended the Main Street Market, it's out in our City Hall Plaza. It runs on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and it's a community asset, and we'd love to see you support it. So the AFSP Out of the Darkness Treasure Valley Community Walk is Saturday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Kleiner Park. And there's a Chamber Mayoral Candidate Forum on Tuesday, October 15th from noon to 1:30. That is through the Chamber office, and it's at West Data Auditorium. So you can get the tickets from the Chamber of Commerce. With that, are there any other announcements? Okay, I'll go ahead and move to item 6, which is our proclamation. And I see that Stephanie and Sarah are here. If you'll join me at the podium. We're going to turn this and be on the other side. Well, it is Crime Prevention Month, and you know, it really does take our entire community to continue to remain a safe place for our families and kids to live, work, and for our parents to raise their families. So this is an important proclamation, whereas the City of Meridian is committed to ensuring the health, safety, and quality of life of all those living and visiting our city, benefiting from the dependable delivery of public safety that our citizens so greatly appreciate. And whereas the Meridian Police Department's 109 sworn and 33 non-sworn employees are dedicated to keeping the fear of crime from the hearts of 115,000 Meridian residents and growing. And whereas the Meridian residents are responsive to public education measures and able to take personal steps to increase their safety. And whereas each year we are excited to celebrate Crime Prevention Month with fun and engaging public safety events, including the National Walk to School Day, Selfie with a Cop Day, and Public Safety Day. And whereas effective crime prevention programs succeed with partnerships between the Meridian Police Department, other government agencies, civic groups, schools, faith communities, local businesses. Really, Lieutenant? Local businesses and other citizens as they collaborate to nurture collective responsibilities and instill pride. Therefore, I, Mayor Tammy DeVeerd, hereby proclaim the month of October 2019 as Crime Prevention Month in the City of Meridian and call upon the community to acquaint themselves with our Meridian Police Department and actively participate in preventing crime through education, prevention, and awareness. And it is with great pleasure I turn this over to Stephanie. And Stephanie and Sarah, if you have any comments
Sure.
you would like to provide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to extend our gratitude to City Council and Mayor Tammy for always supporting our education and prevention efforts. We put together over 80 events a year, reaching roughly 21,000 community members, and we couldn't do it without the continued support. And so we just really appreciate everything you guys have done for our department and our division. Thank you.
Thank you. And you have some activities coming up, right?
Yes.
What are they?
Yeah, Sarah, did you want to speak to the upcoming events we have?
Yeah, so on October 19th, we have Public Safety Day, and it's going to be at Meridian Fire Station number 1. And we'll have our SWAT, K-9, our traffic team, and also with Meridian Fire out there. And then on October 24th, in the downtown area, we'll have Trunk or Treat with 2 police officers out there for you guys.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Well, thank you both for being here, and Lieutenant Coliani.
He's our photographer.
Both meetings, we've had the presence. Thank you for being here,
Can we get a
and
photo with you, Mayor Tam?
and thank you for all you guys do.
Thank you. Okay, come on. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I'll always give you one.
I like the coordination of the photos during the reading of the proclamation. It's not distracting at all. Okay, Mr. Clerk, anything under item 7?
Madam Mayor, there is nothing.
Okay, item 8, under action items. 8A is from our planning division. We'll talk about ACHD plans for the Locust Grove Road Victory to Overland cross-section. Brian or Caleb?
Madam
Ryan.
Mayor, both of us will talk about this. In addition to the Locust Grove Victory to Overland cross-section, just also some general ACHD coordination dialogue, I'm hoping, in terms of what City Council would like to see. So Locust Grove Victory to Overland is the city's #1 ACHD roadway priority. It has an existing 2-lane cross-section with no center turn lane, no bike lane, no curb gutter, no consistent sidewalks, traffic volumes over design capacity, and projected 2040 volumes suggesting a need for 4 or 5 lanes. One other note, as maybe a pin for later, but Locust Grove matches Meridian Road, and then it goes all the way down to Cuna Road in the south. This is the 50% concept that the public reviewed at the recent public involvement meeting, which ACHD held. It's 5 lanes with a center turn lane and includes bike lanes, detached sidewalks, and also 2 pedestrian crossings at Puffin and Time Zone. This cross-section has heavy landscape impacts with this design. Almost all the trees are in the way. Parkway is just turf where it exists currently, or rock where it doesn't without city partnership. The remaining area behind the backup curb in some areas is too narrow for turf. That condition varies a lot, and there's also no shrubs or trees contemplated with the project. Right-of-way preservation has been inadequate in this area, at least with and for the transportation network as it's planned today. So what are the city's priorities? For this project, the neighborhood, at least in terms of the feedback that ACHD received, seems split. Roughly 50-50 for whether they like it or dislike it, with varying degrees of whether they really dislike it or really like it. Staff has been hearing that a sense of and quality of place is important during the comp plan outreach. Some have questioned why not just a turn lane for this project. Most people, however, are unaware of long-term traffic projections. Even if Meridian doesn't approve any additional housing, CUNA to the south will. They are using our north-south roads, and will continue to do so. The traffic doubles, the road will not function well, even with the center turn lane. It doesn't mean we can't advocate for what we view is in our best interest, though. A parking lot may be safer. Perhaps a safe sense of place is more important. More broadly, though, what is the city willing to do, if anything? ACHD does not do landscaping. There's no guarantee that any compensation for impacts will be used for landscaping by the HOA boards. And a lot of the landscaping, including a lot of the trees, currently are within ACHD right-of-way. They may not even receive reimbursement or impact for those losses. From staff's perspective, besides sitting on the sidelines, there's two options. We can support a cross-section that meets long-term traffic needs that could take any number of forms. We could also support a cross-section that provides more opportunity for neighborhood identity with less emphasis on a thoroughfare. The cost benefit may not be exist, though, in an interim or built-out variety here. There's also the larger network to consider. Eagle Road, for example, dead ends at Hubbard, and Meridian Road, by all appearances, seems to be turning into a North Eagle Road. In either option, even just a three-lane cross-section, the street will change dramatically. Many of the trees will still go, regardless of what that cross-section is. Anything new will be turf or rock. Comparable landscapes will require a higher level of effort to achieve the same feeling in a smaller area. Here's a few cross-sections for comparison. ACHD may be open to some of these or none of these. And note for all of these is that the end of the drawing on the left or right doesn't necessarily mean there's not some remaining area for landscaping, but it varies heavily depending on which section of the street you're looking at. The top is an existing example. This varies again. A lot, sometimes most of the landscaping is in existing right-of-way and will be impacted by any project. The second is the 50% ACHD public involvement proposed cross-section. The third is the same facility, but instead of detached sidewalks, it has 7-foot attached sidewalks. ACHD by default typically does 7-foot attached sidewalks, and by default, city staff typically requests 5-foot detached sidewalks. Attached sidewalks in this case would consolidate remaining open space better. So rather than having turf in a parkway and then some on the back of the sidewalk, you'd have it all together. The benefit of attached sidewalks in this condition is the idea that there is a bike lane here, which does provide some separation between the pedestrians and bicyclists and automotive traffic. The last example here is what's being done on Eagle Road, Victory to Amity. It has no bike lanes, and instead a shared multi-use sidewalk is provided. This requires less overall right-of-way. Just one note, I know it's been discussed among the public and in other media, but I've not shown a 3-lane exhibit here because I'm not able to have any confidence that that would work locally or regionally. That would require work by others to do that, and I'm not willing to suggest that. Regardless of the cross-section, though, there is an attractive option, time and money. And I will turn that over to Caleb.
Good job, Brian. Thank you.
So maybe before we jump in kind of the second part of this, are looking for some direction, if there is any, to weigh in as we work with ACHD on that project that Brian just walked you through. As he mentioned, I'm going to go back to the slide. Our standard default that we ask ACHD to do is this 5-foot detached sidewalk that generally creates a more friendly pedestrian environment where you're not walking next to a 5-lane roadway, even though there are bike lanes there. So cars, typically that gives you 5 or 6 feet. It provides some landscaping, a little bit more just separation from that. But as Brian mentioned, on this project, that really pushes that sidewalk almost literally into people's backyards in some cases. So being as much as we can to limit the impacts of the overall cross-section, the second two options kind of on this one seem to be a little bit more appropriate. And this kind of goes into the second part of this. Again, we've gotten some general direction from the council in the past that yes, we prefer detached sidewalks. And in that case, ACHD requires us to request a cost share agreement and pay for improving the area here in between the curb and the sidewalk. As Brian mentioned, they typically don't do landscaping. They'll patch back in some landscaping occasionally if there's sod there and they rip it out, they'll patch it back in, but they won't put in new landscaping. So this is something where we work with our Parks Department quite regularly to pay for, and sometimes if it's in the county, maintain the area between the curb and the sidewalk. And again, in this case, we even told ACHD staff, man, maybe we do an attached sidewalk in this case just to limit those neighborhood impacts down. So again, if you have really any more direction on that for staff as we continue, particularly on just this mile segment right now, if you want to have a larger discussion about, hey, let's get away from detached sidewalks, we can have that conversation too. But really on this one, we wanted to kind of disclose that to you, that we, Brian, sent an email to them saying, hey, in this case, maybe we don't do detached sidewalks just again to limit those impacts. So are there any thoughts that way? Or you don't have to weigh on anything. We are really just sharing, and it's an ACHD project. This is one where the city could kind of just be on the sidelines, to use Brian's term there, and watch and monitor, but maybe not actively participate in.
Caleb, what is the width of the multi-use sidewalk?
I'm gonna let, is that a 10-foot, Brian? So he's working on the Eagle Road project too, so he's more familiar with that one.
Madam Mayor, I could be wrong, but I believe that's 10 foot, but that does not include the 3-foot buffer there, which is also paved, kind of the textured concrete.
So the buffer is concrete then?
For Eagle Road, it is, yes.
Okay. I do understand. So what they have done on 10 Mile, the sidewalk is not widened. And I understand the concern of the residents in that area. What you have is you've created a corridor of a fence, a sidewalk, and then the roadway. Mm-hmm. You have no storage area for snow that is then plowed, and it's plowed right onto the sidewalk up against the fencing. And in reading the comments, it looks like the concern is, yes, that sense of place to not get into the corridor fill and to have some safety aspects of it. I think with your multi-use sidewalk, the buffer approach seems to get more of that. Could you also look at a 4-lane with a center turn lane where you have roads that intersect with it? So you have a widening where you have cars coming and entering and exiting off the road. Has that been discussed at all?
Madam Mayor, I'm not sure how much thought ACHD's put into that. I can say that there are a lot of subdivision entryways in this area, though, and there are also a lot of front-on housing taking direct access from the street. So I think that's the reason for a lot of the congestion that occurs today.
It seems like many cities across the country are not widening roadways. They're looking at other ways to move traffic. I'm not saying keep it at 2 lanes by any means, but have other methods in intersection improvements and other ways to move traffic more efficiently along the roadways been considered.
Madam Mayor, we have some new language in our new comprehensive plan to consider things like that. I do not believe ACHD has done a lot of work in that regard as part of their master street map or their capital improvement plan, though. So I'm inclined to say no, but that might be a good question for ACHD or Caleb.
Madam Mayor, I know Mr. Lucas is here, not to put him on the spot, but you have questions that way. I will just, kind of to Brian's point, I mean, we do work with ACHD on a master street map and trying to keep some of those shorter local trips on collectors and the local roadway network instead of having to have everybody get on an arterial roadway. That's not necessarily anything new or innovative, but through design and making sure that these roads don't dead end, that you can actually get traverse between these section line roads internally, I think can help to some degree. We are still moving motor vehicles though, even in a lot of that approach.
Good evening, Justin. Thank you for joining us.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, for the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I represent the Ada County Highway District. Business address is 3775 Adams Street in Garden City, Idaho. Madam Mayor, members of the council, so ACHD carefully considers how wide a street needs to be. We don't want to build roads that are too wide either. They're more expensive to build, they're more expensive to maintain. What we are finding as we build out an urban network in the county, specifically in the city of Meridian, is that there's a lot of growth planned in the future. And so when we do a project like this, one of the biggest considerations we take into account is we would prefer just to touch this roadway once and be done and not have to come back in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years even and widen it again. And that has been our strategy. That is the strategy that is supported by our commission. And in some cases, 5-lane roadways, based on the projections, based on the modeling, based on your comprehensive plan, are the appropriate solution. This specific road, Locust Grove, if you look at it in context, it's one of the very few ways to get over the freeway. There's a freeway overpass that is 5 lanes in this area. It connects into Overland, which is a major east-west corridor, and the freeway itself is not that far away. And there's a lot of growth currently happening and planned to happen south of this corridor. So that's why we are pursuing a 5-lane cross-section on this specific project. Our CIP calls for it. All of the analysis we've done calls for it. And we believe it's the right approach for this specific cross-section. That being said, certainly there are right-of-way implications to that strategy. And this subdivision, I'm not sure the name of it, that is on the west side of Locust Grove, has been there a long time. And when it went in, it wasn't preserved for that space back, I don't know, it's been there quite a while. Early 90s, maybe.
Sportsman Point.
Yeah, it's Sportsman's Point. Might have been the 80s. It's been a long time. And so we have tried really hard. As you think about USTIC and some of these other corridors we've built out, we haven't had these issues because we've been able to preserve for the right-of-way. In this specific instance, it's one of those situations where the full right-of-way has not been preserved, and therefore we're going into some of those HOA lots that have been established, years and years ago, which we have done many times before.
Council questions for Justin.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Lowell Roberts.
Madam Mayor, Justin, thank you so much for being here. We always appreciate it. I am a 23-year resident of Sportsman Point, so I have been hearing a lot from my neighbors that back up to Locust Grove, and they're really upset and they're really sad. And I'm just saying I can help relay, and I don't know if there's anything else, if there's any other. I know there was one town hall open house, but I know they're looking for more information and to be heard.
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Little Roberts, thank you. Yeah, we did hear from the neighbors at the town hall. When we do these types of projects, oftentimes we're having specific conversations with specific people, many of which live along that road and back up against the Locust Grove Road. And so there's ample opportunity for this type of dialogue. Certainly, one of the outcomes of the public involvement meeting was you having this conversation and potential further conversations with the ACHD Commission about what type of pedestrian facility, detached, attached, that's certainly up for consideration and something that can be looked at. I think if it's the 3-lane versus 5-lane question, that's really more of a policy question. I mean, that would be a significant shift from all of the planning and thought that has gone into this network. It's really more of a network question, because once you squeeze traffic at one location, it spills over into other locations. There's no way in a mile grid system to have all those mile grid streets be 3 lanes when you have 115,000 people in your community. Certainly communities are searching for options on how to move traffic more efficiently, but if you go to areas similar to ours that have grown even larger, it's not uncommon to see 5-lane roadways, sometimes 7-lane roadways within those communities, trying to accommodate the traffic that is that's going to and through the area. That may not be what the neighbors want to hear, and that's certainly fair, especially if they have a piece of property backing up against Locust Grove. That being stated, I wish we would have, back in the, whatever it was, the late 80s, early 90s, I wish we would have known what this area was going to be back then. And I don't know if anyone really thought about that. I don't know if we had the vision back then to know that it would grow this fast, to know that it would be this attractive of an area for people to come to. We do now, and we certainly have changed our procedures when it comes to right-of-way preservation. But in this case, we just didn't preserve it at the time.
Madam Mayor, follow up. Justin, another one of the issues that, it's been several years ago, but one of our residents, a teenager, was hit. So they're really concerned about the students trying to cross traffic, and there's been rumors saying that the Hawk signal would be moved closer to the intersection of Overland and Locust Grove, and I have not heard anyone that thinks that would enhance safety.
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman, that's a great question. I'm not exactly sure of that project detail. I can find out about that. I'm not the project officer on this specific one, so I don't know I know there are, if it's not one, maybe multiple pedestrian crossings planned into this project, which is very typical for our projects. How it's located, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can find that out.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
as a former 12-year resident of Sportsman and the rest practically in observation and where I am now in Green Valley, I want to try to put a nail in the coffin of the 3-lane idea. As Councilman Roberts, I'm sure you spend plenty of time there on Locust Grove as well. Myself, this is Citizen Palmer speaking. I have very little, I mean, just here and there, slowdowns with people wanting to turn left because it's in the morning, everyone's headed north, in the evening, everyone's headed south, so turning left isn't really a problem. The problem exists 9 months out of the year during school when there's a 2-mile backup where everybody is headed north to get to Mountain View High School, and having a center turn lane and just 2 travel lanes would not do a single thing for that. So the reality is there is absolutely no way that this road gets expanded and it not be 5 lanes. And so whatever we as a council, even though it's obviously out of our hands, whatever we can do to help facilitate the discussions and peacekeeping and help with landscaping, whatever might be necessary to try to preserve the sanity of the neighbors who've experienced decades of an exceptionally wide, beautiful, giant berm, winding sidewalk, that will go away, whatever we can do to help ease the pain. Even though I only have 3 months left, I'm talking for a future council apparently. Happy to do, but there's just no way that this turns into a 3-lane road. I will literally move closer to 10 miles because that's, I mean, I talk a lot to my neighbors because they're always asking, when is the roundabout happening? When is Locust Grove getting widened? And I try to keep them updated with the dates, and it's not just myself. I mean, I can't tell you how many other people are like, we're only sticking around because we know that that's going to be 5 lanes, and that are all also looking forward to the next mile. But certainly with that, to ease the high school issue 9 months out of the year is just, it's bad.
Madam Mayor, if I can, this kind of transitions and might be appropriate for Justin to just stay there, if you don't mind. But I do want to touch on some things because that is part of mine. And again, we can double back if you have more that we can do to mitigate some of those neighborhood impacts, whether it's, requesting this multi-use cross-section or I'm not saying we buy trees for those subdivisions or whatever, but whatever that might be to help kind of lessen the pain there. But I do want to talk about some of those future projects, and you just mentioned the mile south. And here's some of my concern. History is going to repeat because all we're doing right now in the CIP is preserving for 3 lanes on that section of Locust Grove South. Guess what? No one's going to be surprised when the model shows a need for 5 lanes. You like those subdivision entrances and landscape buffers on Tuscany? That wasn't done in the 80s. That was done this last decade. The planning, it's non-existent. And that's the concern. Just in 2016 even, that's when this section that we're just talking about here went to 5 lanes. Up until then, we were preserving for that to be a 3-lane roadway. So it's frustrating as staff, these landscape buffers aren't landscape buffers, but holding zones for ACHD to then come in and buy them for the right of way and improve the roads, which are needed. I'm not saying they aren't. I'm not advocating for a 3-lane roadway. I'm just saying there's the planning there, and they're constrained by state code. They can only plan for a 20-year horizon. Again, don't be, and I may not be in this seat, you probably won't be there in 5 years, but this exact same conversation is going to happen because the same thing is going to happen the miles south. We all see the need for 5 lanes there, but no one's planning for it, no one's preserving for it. That's part of this conversation. How do we stop this from happening? Meridian Road, I get it. Those subdivisions are older. Some of these you can kind of say, yeah, it's been there since the 80s or whatever. But we're seeing a lot of these projects that are newer subdivisions and brand new, and we're still not preserving for what we kind of anecdotally know we'll need, a 5-lane roadway on most all arterials. McMillan, we kind of give that one, there's some constraints there with power poles and a big irrigation facility. But for the most part, that future model is going to show a need for 5, and we just don't plan to preserve for the ultimate need. And that's what's frustrating, I guess, is that's, and again, it's not, ACHD is somewhat constrained that way, that they have to show how they can pay for these improvements and not just plan for these really wide roadways all over the place. But again, the subdivision landscape buffers are the ones that end up paying the price or the cost to accommodate that future roadway. So that's part of the conversation that we want to talk about future projects and how do we, Locust Grove to the south is currently planned for 3 lanes, and I don't have that up, but most of that's annexed and developed in the city already. So there's really not even a lot we can do about that one. It's pretty much is what it is, but ACHD is only planning for that to be 3 lanes. What are we supposed to do as staff? It's tough.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Milam.
Yes, Caleb. I think we definitely, just seeing the explosion that's happened over the last, 10, 15 years, I think that it's really important to maybe change the way that we do things and look into the planning better for this. And to Councilman Little Roberts, this is the first time I've ever heard anybody complain about wanting a smaller road. Traffic problems have been the main #1 complaint of every citizen that I've talked to in Meridian for as long as I've talked to citizens. So since I started campaigning over 6 years ago, that's the main complaint, and it's getting worse and worse and worse every year. So, and I'm not saying make roads too big, but they definitely make them big enough. I live on Meridian Road. It's like counting how many people go through that road during rush hour. It's painful. It's a painful drive. I'm excited for next year, but I've never heard anybody say, no, please make my road smaller. I just really struggle with that.
I have. Once your 3 lanes, your 2 lanes with the center turn lane turns to 5, and they see now how fast traffic travels and how hard it is to get across 2 fast lanes of traffic going one direction to turn left, people get a little bit different opinion. and especially when they have lost their sense of place, because you now have a corridor of pavement, a narrow sidewalk, and a fence. So it's with the sidewalks, it's the separation between those fast cars now that have concern, and people almost want to go back to their 3-lane roads because it feels safer.
Madam Mayor, then we need
Ms.
to put
Milo.
walls up around the city because there's, you can't have.
Oh,
it
what
both-
a unique
You
idea.
can't have it both ways. You either get your sense of place or you can move traffic. I mean, we can't do, sure, wouldn't we all love a cobblestone road and a beautiful, but if you can't drive down it, what good does it do you? Unless we just give up cars. Sorry. You can't have it both ways. Unless people stop.
Well,
listening.
you did say you hadn't heard, and I was offering you.
Okay.
I have.
All right,
So-
thank you.
Oh, what a cop-out.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
to the question before us, for me, when you show the cross-sections, it's the bottom one that seems to balance the considerations the best in this stretch. It's the relatively smaller footprint, removing the bike lane, allowing that to be, use the multi-purpose sidewalk is I think the fairest consideration under difficult challenges. So there's the answer. And then the question for maybe a later discussion, but soon is, what are the options and opportunities for how we could help mitigate some of this impact? We don't need to vet it maybe right now in the dais, but put a pin in that, knowing that we want to try and assist if we could in some reasonable manner. The ship has sailed and the need is there. That one seems to be the one that balances the considerations the best, in my view. And Madam Mayor, I think a future meeting topic would be what we can do within our control, whether it's south, and there'll be other areas that we need to highlight and, take maybe a more proactive approach than we have, understanding ACHD's constraints. Nothing constrains us from imposing our own land use conditions for right-of-way preservation if necessary. Again, that's a different conversation for a different day, but so we don't lose sight of it.
Caleb, is there another cross-section choice that is not on here?
Madam Mayor, I mean, I think these are some that Brian just came up with as reasonable alternatives, as he mentioned, and doesn't sound like 3 lanes is all that popular, but there are several hybrids of these, and even within the travel lanes, those can vary in width too, so you can pick up a foot here or make it, a foot wider, kind of give or take on some of that. So yeah, I don't want to say limitless, but there's certainly other cross sections that potentially could be out there. ACHD's already invested in the 50% design concept, which is the second one. It is a concept at this point, and they are seeking public.
See, and we're saving you 8 foot there. So maybe we can save a couple trees and not have you replace them somewhere else. Don't we do that?
Never know.
And
So I guess, Kayla, by your statement, if they've planned for the 99-foot right-of-way, and you say that maybe you have a foot here and there, can you make the buffer a little bit wider?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, just to throw a few thoughts in here. The ultimate difference between 99 feet and 92 feet is,
It's 7.
7 feet. So if you split that on either side, you're talking about 3.5 feet on either side. And so I just don't want there to be an impression that we're going to be able to save a bunch of trees by mitigating this 3.5 feet on
I
either
was
side.
offering you a suggestion.
Yeah, there may be a way that may have that outcome, but oftentimes, once you get close to a tree, even within the root line, the tree is a loss, because either we remove it or it dies a year later because we damage the roots. So if this widening project is going to have impacts on the landscaping, that is a fact. And I don't want you to believe that by modifying the cross-section in some way, and that may be your recommendation, which is totally up to you, and there may be other reasons to modify it, but if it's solely to preserve landscaping, or trees specifically, that's an unlikely outcome.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Board.
The reason for my comment on that is it captures all of the purposes of the 99 feet.
Very fair.
So it meets those needs, yet provides, all things being equals, a net less impact.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
well, I guess to add to that, if you already have 99 feet of right-of-way, they could do the bottom one with the extended buffer plus a bike lane. No?
Madam Mayor, just to clarify, we haven't purchased the right-of-way yet, so we're in the design phase. Once we design a project and determine the ultimate cross-section, we then go and purchase the necessary right-of-way. So if indeed the cross-section is shrunk down a little bit, we would have to likely buy less because we wouldn't need as much to build the project. So those are some of the balancing factors there.
And I think that we've identified those multi-use sidewalks would be both bike and pedestrian.
And Madam
We
Mayor,
have it anyway.
members of the council,
Can't put trees.
further information on those. Many people like the multi-use pathway idea. Many cyclists do not like them. Just for full, we hear on both sides all the time. This isn't a new issue for us, and so we have some knowledge on this specific issue. Many of the cyclists who commute or ride, want to ride faster, don't like the concept of being up and out of the street on a pathway because they can't go as fast. There's potential conflicts with pedestrians, et cetera. So there's some trade-offs. There's always trade-offs to these decisions, and that's my only point with that comment.
And there will be a trade-off, but I think if we ever want to move from auto dependency, you have to provide a safe environment for your kids to bike. And no parent would put their kid out on a bike lane on the road. So if we want to change that we have more bike-friendly, they figure it out in other countries of how
Certainly.
bikes and people can share a lane, and it can actually move along, but we need to start somewhere. Any other questions for Justin or for Brian or Caleb?
We'll come back at a future date then and talk some more, and I'd like to talk to Justin offline and see if there's maybe some way that we can come up with an ultimate preservation, and I'll just throw this out there now and we'll have the conversation maybe later. We did a similar thing for Chinden before ITD had the money to purchase that, but we knew that the cross-section was going to be wider. We had, as development came in, we had them basically plat two common lots along, paralleling the state facility. One that would be the future buffer, and one that was reserved that when ITD had the money, they would go buy it from the developer. So your building setbacks were at its ultimate location, but the transportation agency didn't have the funds yet to do that. So we worked with them. That puts the city in the middle of some of that, but I'd rather have that discussion, if you will, with the development community rather than having it with existing neighborhoods later on and buying those landscape buffers. But that could be one solution, but we still need ACHD's help in that to come up with the ultimate cross sections for some of these roadways. And this, just one final, this ties into some of the conversation we'll have next year too with the comprehensive plan and implementing that and where we grow. Are we gonna do that on all arterials everywhere all the time? Or are we going to say we're going to target growth in certain areas and work with ACHD to say we're preserving the right of way because these roads are the ones we need to widen to 5 lanes or whatever? And yeah, Black Cat, we're not because we're not approving development out there or whatever. So anyways, I just want to kind of tie that in. That to me, that is part of this conversation. Is for Meridian, anyways. We need to strategically grow, and we need our community partners to be part of that and be on the same page with them too. So anyway.
And I think the comment that South Eagle Road dead ends into Hubbard Reservoir, you know that the impact at some point is finite. These other ones that have good connectivity, they probably should be looked at. But when you say that Locust Grove is now going to look like Meridian Road, that's frightening. But it's what it will look like. Maybe not at the same speeds, hopefully. But yeah, that's concerning because it is in the middle of your community, but in that area, you have to get some sidewalks out there for these high school students to walk to school on. That's paramount. Okay, so we will come back to this at some point. And does the master mobility map on the comprehensive plan contemplate a lot of this?
Again, that's kind of, yeah, that last part of the discussion, working with ACHD on, realize you're fiscally constrained to 20 years, but let's think 50 and 75 years out. And
These guys.
Yeah. Well, and we appreciate your involvement, Justin, with that, because we do have to look, like David Zaramba said, longer term and further down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there is nothing further, Brian or Caleb, anything further on this? Okay. Okay, item 8B is public comment on the plans for City of Meridian business hours, contemplating a pilot project that would last 2 months on what would be office or city hall hours that would be most convenient for our citizens. We did go out and poll on Nextdoor what would be the most convenient for you to apply for permits, pay your utility bill, meet with staff, and ask questions at City Hall. We asked to provide the vote on by yesterday, and we had 117 votes. Vote between Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Friday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. The other option was Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We did not reduce the amount of hours of open office time to our citizens. We did have some citizens say they did like the idea that they could do business with the city on their way home from work. We have 58% choose the Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Friday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. 41% chose to maintain the office hours that we have now. So, Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone signed up to provide testimony?
Madam Mayor, nobody signed up.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to weigh in on our hours of operation for City Hall and city facilities? Okay. Council, we can put this on for next week, so we have a full council. What would you like to do?
Madam Mayor? That makes great sense, to do that, have it available for potential action next week.
Okay, very good. Well, then we will move to item 8C, which is a public hearing for hands-free driving ordinance. This we also put on Nextdoor to ask our citizens to weigh in. The question was, should drivers be allowed to hold handheld devices while driving in Meridian? We did note that their input would be provided to City Council for their consideration on determining a hands-free city ordinance, if it's right for the City of Meridian or not. We had 553 votes. 74% said it should be legal, and 25% said it should be allowed. So, Council, at this point, I will ask our clerk to see if there's anyone signed up.
Madam Mayor, nobody signed in for this topic.
Okay. This is a public hearing. We are seeking comments from our citizens on what your thoughts are on this particular ordinance. Is there anyone who wishes to provide comment? Boy, I think you should get an extra patch if you make comment, don't you? Okay,
There we
come
go.
on up. You do? Oh, part of it is you have to come to the podium, state your name and address, and we'd love to hear especially what a youth perspective is.
All right, so I'm Michael McCormick, and my address is 2250 West Piazza Street. And so I'd like to say that I don't think handheld devices should be allowed to be in someone's hand or possession whilst driving, because I don't think it's safe for other people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate you getting up, and good luck with that.
The paper.
Who's that?
Hey, is there anyone? Yes, please. Now, see, I think you're going to have to grab that mic and pull it down.
Probably.
Yes.
My name is Miles McCormick. I live on 2250 West Piazza Street, same as him. I do not think handheld devices should be allowed while someone is just driving, because it could be dangerous for other drivers along with yourself. Because say you're like having a call and you're thinking about something else. Well, you might not be looking in front of you. So, oh no, poor Big Johnny, I'm just gonna say, hits you as you run a red light.
I think it's happened before, so
Probably.
that's a very likely scenario. Thank you for your testimony.
My name is Flint Torrance, and I live at 7042 North Agrarian Avenue, I think, or I'm not sure. So same thing what
But
Miles
you live
said.
in Meridian,
Yes,
right?
Yes, same thing for that Miles said, because you know how like the roads moved to like all the fences. So say they could accidentally like rip through somebody else's house and just end up like chaos in a neighborhood.
That's true.
Yes.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to provide testimony on this item? Okay. Again, council, we can continue this to next week when we have a full council. Okay. Well, and thank you. We appreciate you joining us at our city council meeting and weighing in. We always love to hear the voice from our youth. Item 9A is the first reading of ordinance 19-1852. We can read it for the first reading. We still will have two others. Mr. Neri.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, so you have two ordinances actually listed, and so I would suggest if you want to give us direction what you would like to see.
Which one?
You could put that on for a first reading next week, or you can do it for all three, whatever your preference is, first reading or all three, but next week, but I would pick one and give us that direction.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
in light of all of the information we have received, it seemed to make the most sense to go forward with the single fine version but change that amount to $90 rather than $25.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
I think that in all of our public outreach that we're going to do, I think it needs to be well known that $90 is $150. It's not $90 once you add court fees in. So I think that'll help. No. I think 90 is a little steep once you add in the court costs myself. So maybe go for something that maybe ends up being 100. I understand the chief wants it to be 90, and that's the standard for a lot of other things, but for the state distracted driving, it's 25 plus court cost, which is 90. So it's either we market it as 90 or we charge 90 plus court costs and let people know that it's really 150. Because the court costs are quite substantial. And I don't think, it's a surprise to people. We're already hitting them with something, and, if they're breaking the law, they should be, but.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, not to get totally sideways.
Mr. Borton.
Mr. Neri, inclusion of court costs is not required, isn't it? Aren't there other infractions that are just a fine and period?
Madam Member of the Council, no, sir, all of them have court costs attached. So they're all a fine, and then there are required court costs that the court must collect on infractions.
Versus the example that the chief gave, if we did enhance other fines like the off-leash, that doesn't have court costs in.
Madam Member of the Council, court costs are attached on every single infraction. They're required by code.
Okay.
So the county clerk is required to collect it.
Okay. So whether you have a handheld device or a dog off-leash, you still have court costs.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, Madam Mayor?
Mr. Borton.
So for an infraction, are there court costs included?
It's in addition.
Are they included in the $90?
We're asking you the same question several
Yes.
times. I apologize.
Court costs are always attached.
Same answer.
Yes.
They're not included, though.
So, and Madam Mayor,
In addition.
Yes, Mr. Borton.
and if we publish with the $90 plus court costs, that might invite some public hearing next week, so maybe we get some new comments.
Yes. Just might. Chief Bongiorno, did you have your hand up? Okay. Okay, anything further on this? Okay, we will bring this back next week for the first reading. Okay, item 9B is ordinance 19-1853. Mr. Clerk, will you please read this item by title only?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's an ordinance amending Title 10, Chapter 4, Meridian City Code, adopting local amendments to Section 307 of the 2015 International Fire Code regarding open burning and providing an effective date.
Okay, you've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anyone who would like to hear it read in its entirety? Thank you for that.
Madam Mayor. Oh.
Ms. Lowell Roberts.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 19-1853 with suspension of rules.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 9B, ordinance 19-1853. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
No.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Burning railroad ties.
All ayes. Item 9C is ordinance 19-1854. Mr. Clerk, will you please read this by title?
This is an ordinance amending Meridian City Code, Section 2-1-1C, allowing for appointments of partial terms for commissioners, adopting a savings clause, and providing an effective date.
You've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anyone who wishes to hear it read in its entirety?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
I move that we approve ordinance number 19-1854 with suspension of rules.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 9C, ordinance 19-1854. Any comments? Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. We did add one thing under item 10, future meeting topics, is to have further discussion on the roadway designs and right-of-way needs for future roads. Anything else? Okay. Council, we took care of our business in our work session for the executive session. And so if there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
we adjourn.
Second.
I A motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All ayes.